All right, so tell me about this legislation that you've introduced that would ban big soda from being part of food stamps.
So the very program that we're talking about, that we're trying to change, is we're trying to get nutritional food into our poorest people in America. That's what this program is for. Formerly known as food stamps, now known as SNAP. This is the number one purchased item under SNAP. Not meat, not vegetables, not potatoes. Sugary drinks is the number one purchased item with SNAP benefits. So at one hand, we're subsidizing these terrible diseases. On the other hand, we're treating them under Medicaid. We're treating the same diseases: diabetes, hypertension, obesity.
Restrictions on SNAP, especially on soda, aren't going to make an ounce of difference. They're not going to save a penny or a pound when it comes to the taxpayers or those on the program. And keep in mind, 80% of people on SNAP actually work. So they're working. They just don't make enough money to make ends meet. But if you're also going to go after the nutrition argument, Sean, why just focus on one set of products? If you're concerned about, let's just say, sugars in the diet, why not address all sugar?
All right, guys, good Tuesday to you. The president looking like he's striking some deals already. The market is looking up. You know, I'm just saying, I told you so. I told you so. Like all these people who are wetting their pants and wringing their hands. Oh my God, this guy is falling. Looks like we're going to get some deals and the market's rebounding well. So just saying, FYI, the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer up on Capitol Hill today making the case. They actually were really interesting. They've been putting out this series of 10 unfair trade practices faced by American exporters out at the U.S. Trade Reps offices. And here's one that I thought was just mind-blowing. Over 100,000 Chinese-made American flags are sold every month on just one e-commerce site alone, resulting in $2 million of lost sales for American manufacturers. We're literally letting them make our own flags. How insane is that? I mean, the PPE and everything else crazy. But anyway, we're fighting for American workers and companies. This is why this is the big picture, and it's working. President met with Prime Minister Netanyahu, more world leaders queuing up to come in. I had the opportunity to sit down with Prime Minister Netanyahu for a little while last night, well over an hour, to talk to him about what's going on in his country as well as the tariffs. And you know what he said to me? I asked him, so how did the meeting go? Great, we took our tariffs down. I said, but then President Trump raised them to 17%. He goes, yeah, because of the non-tariff barriers. I go, so what are you going to do about that? And he goes, take them down. Do you understand? I mean, that's what's happening. And it was unbelievable how quick, because they're getting the message. He's like, you have no greater ally than Israel, and we're going to do what we can. And you see Vietnam. You're seeing talk from Japan. All these other countries are coming in. It's working. And I'm just saying, for all the people who said, oh, I'm so concerned, because you're not willing to fight. You're the same person that backs down every time there's a problem. I think by Friday, we may be seeing some serious headway on this. Just, it is amazing, because no one's going to give Trump any credit. They're going to go, oh, well, we didn't like his disruptive, blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever. By the way, speaking of Netanyahu, I was shocked as I went over to meet him last night, the number of protesters outside Blair House where he was staying. But then these numbnuts in Grand Central Station took it over and locked the doors. So if you're like commuting because you get home to your family, you got locked into Grand Central Station. They're nuts. This is insane. These people need to be punished. Protesting and sharing your voice in the First Amendment, I'm all for that. But locking people into Grand Central Station, no way, Jose. Another big win, though, for Trump with the Supreme Court. They gave him a big, huge win, allowing him to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport people. Big win. Pam Bondi out there celebrating it. Anyway, we've got a lot to do. Congressman Keith Self is coming up. He's going to talk to us about tariffs. He's going to talk to us about the budget resolution. But the reason I wanted him on is he's introduced legislation to stop what they call SNAP, which is food stamps, supplemental nutritional assistance, from paying for soda specifically. And I want to show you what RFK had to say on this. Take a look real quick.
All of them are getting calls every day from the big soda companies, the sugar soda and the fake food companies. We're not eating food, we're eating food-like substances. And these companies are now, just like the tobacco companies were, are flooding into the offices of your state leaders and legislatures of the governor, and they're telling him he's making a big mistake.
Okay, so that's what Keith Self is up against. So I'm going to talk to him about his bill, the budget, and tariffs, and they're going to bring on the CEO of the American Beverage Association, Kevin Keane, to rebut this, to tell us his side of the story. You're not going to hear this discussion anywhere else. Both sides are reflected today. You tell me what you think in the copy. And by the way, tomorrow, Kevin Hassett is going to join us. I'm pushing off this Senate thing that I talked because the tariffs are a big deal. Kevin Hassett, the director of the National Economic Council director, he will join us tomorrow, and we'll do the Senate thing, I think, next week, because we just got to get some good White House intel on this. Before we get to this great conversation, though, I want to tell you, I've told you this before, I love starting the morning off with a cup of Wired to Fish coffee. Look at, that's why the bag looks like this, because every time somebody comes over, I got a big group coming over, I did the morning meeting here, the family here, you name it, I brew a big pot of this stuff. It's exceptional. It's unbelievable. It's rich with flavor. I love this stuff. I'm kind of a coffee snob. I'm going to be honest with you. Wine snob, coffee snob. And so when you taste this stuff, the Arabica beans from Mexico and Guatemala, unbelievable. And the thing I love more than anything is as I'm sipping this great cup of coffee, I think to myself, I actually love these people. Whenever I buy it, and I buy it with my money, I get a nice note from the folks at Wired to Fish Coffee. And they say, thanks a lot, we're with you. But I go to their website and just check it out. If you go to Wired to Fish, and it's the numeral fishcoffee.com, you'll see what I'm talking about. They love Jesus, fishing, and coffee. What great priorities. And I'm telling you, it's awesome. And right now, here's the great news. Wired to Fish comes in both the 2-pound and the 5-pound bag. This is unbelievable. So if you really are a big coffee lover, get the 5-pound bag. And don't forget the discount code WeCare when you make your order. You get 10% off if you use WeCare when you go to Wired, the numeral 2, fishcoffee.com. So let's make 2025 the year we align our coffee choices with our wallets. Vote for companies that share our values. Go to wired2fishcoffee.com. All right. Coffee gets me up. You know what gets me to bed? Beam's Dream Powder. I've told you this before. I have crushed bag after bag of Dreams Beam Powder. And you see there's 2. I've got one more. I've got like 2 scoops left in it. Every night, 20, 30 minutes before I go to bed, I take 1 scoop, put it in some water, 30 to 40 seconds in the microwave. I'm telling you, I cannot get a good night's sleep without this stuff. I bring it with me everywhere I go now, and I am so excited to share how this has made a difference. This is a company that is proudly founded in America, run by people who also share our values. They work hard and they deliver results. It's science-backed, and it's got ingredients that prove to get you a healthy night's sleep so you can take on the day. I feel refreshed when I wake up. Last night, literally hit the bed, woke up before the alarm went off today, 30 minutes before, kicking it ready to go, started my workout. It is made with all the stuff that you guys have tried before in one amazing blend. Reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, melatonin. This is amazing. It has already improved over 17.5 million nights of sleep, helping people across the country, professionals, athletes, regular people. So here's the deal. Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount, 40% off. You can try it right now, 40% off. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code Spicer at checkout. Shopbeam.com. Use code Spicer for 40% off. Trust me, all the flavors are great. Without further delay, Congressman Keith Self of Texas. Congressman Self, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
You bet, Sean. Great to be here.
All right, so tell me about this legislation that you've introduced that would ban big soda from being part of food stamps.
Well, frankly, this is part of SNAP. And remember, that's Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So the very program that we're talking about, that we're trying to change, is we're trying to get nutritional food into our poorest people in America. That's what this program is for. Formerly known as food stamps, now known as SNAP. So this legislation would ban sugary drinks. It's as simple as that. Because on one hand, we subsidize obesity, heart attacks, hypertension through these sugary drinks. And here's the point. This is the #1 purchased item under SNAP. Not meat, not vegetables, not potatoes. Sugary drinks is the #1 purchased item with SNAP benefits. So at one hand, we're subsidizing these terrible diseases. On the other hand, we're treating them under Medicaid, we're treating the same diseases: diabetes, hypertension, obesity.
So why? Okay, so first of all, let's just define this. So is it like Coke and Pepsi, but not Diet Coke and not Diet Pepsi? Is it Gatorade, but not Zero, or what? Like what is your definition of a sugary substance? So we're all playing on the same song sheet.
Well, we're kind of talking about carbonated beverages. There are some instances where there will have to be decisions made by the department, by RFK Jr., who is actually on his Make America Healthy Again kick. He actually supports this because this is exactly what he's campaigning on: Make America Healthy Again. So that the actual rules of what would be included. My point is basically carbonated sugary beverages. Now we've got energy drinks. They're all over the map. There's everything you can think of. There's sugary soda. There's energy drinks. As you say, where does diet fit in? So that would be the decisions that the department would then have to write the rules to enforce the law.
Right, but again, I guess part of my concern is that we're leaving this up to the feds to decide, these agencies, as opposed to allowing you, the lawmaker, to be specific on this. I mean, so is it that just the carbonated then, so energy drinks fit in, but like a Gatorade wouldn't? I just want people to understand your legislation specifically. What does it target?
It's targeting drinks that very carefully defined have no nutritional value, and yet they have sugar in them that would cause obesity, diabetes, hypertension. That's the key. So however they fit into this category, that's my point. That's the point of this bill. We want nutrition to be provided through SNAP benefits, not sugary drinks that have no nutritional value. So the key here is nutrition versus sugar.
Okay.
Sodas are a good place to start, but frankly, the rules written by the department would define exactly what fits under it. So this law defines nutrition and sugary drinks.
I guess what I'm trying to get my head around it. So just so you understand, like, I'm sympathetic to your point, but I'm just trying to, I drink, there's a brand called Zevia, right? And it's made with, it's no calories. It's clear. It's not got, dyes in it or whatever. And I'm just trying to figure out, so does that is it clearly it's healthier, but I'm not sure anyone would say it's nutritional. And so where's the line between, like, I'm just trying to think, water is obviously not necessarily nutritional, I would argue, but it's healthy for you. So what defines, if we can flip this on its head for a second, what defines a nutritional drink, right? So is Gatorade nutritional because it has electrolytes?
No, nutrition is meat, potatoes, and vegetables. Let's just define it as that.
Okay, so then what would be a beverage?
These are foods that have protein in them, that have carbohydrates in them, so that you can sustain your body. You can protect your cells. It won't cause you to get fat, obesity. So nutrition is the key to what you're asking me. Those drinks have no nutritional value. I would submit that they fit under this bill. So remember, we're talking about federal benefits here, Sean, to our poorest people. So we have the right, if we're going to spend taxpayer dollars, to provide them food, because this is the poorest of the poor that are on SNAP. And frankly, they're going to use other means. I've been told by the people on the actual committee that they basically use, on the average, 3 ways to pay for their food. SNAP is only one of them. So if they want to purchase sugary drinks or drinks that have no nutritional value, use one of the other 2 ways that they use to purchase their food. But the taxpayer dollars should be providing them nutrition, which is what they need to sustain themselves.
Okay, so outside of like a protein drink, right? There's these drinks that you can either add protein to or pre-made.
Right.
I mean, I want to just be clear. Is it that your position that you should just have water or a protein drink, or in your head, does any other beverage qualify for this?
Well, I don't know, because there's a plethora of beverages out there, and we will have to define it in general terms. But the point again is sugar and nutrition. Those are the 2 criteria. We don't want to have something that's only got sugar. Because again, this is the #1 purchased product under SNAP benefits, sugary drinks. And sugar, of course, has some value as a carbohydrate, but we want them to have nutrition, which is meat, potatoes, and vegetables.
So RFK, as you mentioned, seems supportive of this. Have you actually had a conversation with him, and has he expressed his specific support for this legislation?
I have not. We're basically following his media presence, and he does support this, and specifically, he supports this very idea. So I don't think we'll have any problem getting to a determination under the rule of HHS exactly what constitutes a nutrition drink without sugar only.
Okay. Why just, I mean, to your point, these benefits are supposed to be nutritional, right? Supplemental nutritional, right? That's what the program's called.
Right.
Why limit it to just beverages, and why not say all food purchase has to be to fit this description?
It's a great point, because this is the most purchased item under SNAP benefits, and this is the big one that we want to cut down. You have to start somewhere, and the sugary drinks being the most purchased item would go a long way to stop subsidizing obesity, hypertension, diabetes.
All right. So what was it that made you want to do this, of all people in Congress? Like, what was the impetus? Did you just sort of, you look like a pretty healthy guy. Is this like a personal thing to you? Was it something that constituents came to you and said, hey, the school lunches and the other SNAP benefits that people are used are just like, what was it drove you personally to lead this effort?
It was the discussions on the farm bill, because I've got a lot of farmers in my district. Texas has great agriculture, but the farm bill, known as the farm bill, is basically a lot of SNAP. In fact, the majority of the benefits provided under the farm bill are not to farmers to farm more food. They're to provide SNAP. Now, I understand back at the beginning of the farm bill, you needed to have some program that would get the urban votes. And frankly, farmers are rural. So that's why the food stamp program was added to the farm bill. Well, now SNAP benefits are a majority of the farm bill. And so it's really a food bill, not a farm bill. So I got to looking at that and I said, what in the world? So most of the farm bill, which our farmers need to help produce food in America, if we're going to be self-sufficient, we need to grow more food. Most of the benefits under the farm bill go to SNAP. That's what drove me to say we need to cut out some of this that is not making America healthy. In fact, it's making America obese and diabetic. We need to cut that out so we can get back to the farm bill being actual bill that supports our food supply and doesn't just subsidize obesity.
So when you introduced this bill, what was the reaction of like soda lobbyists?
Oh, well, they're going to push back because they're trying to sell more soda. But what our point here, our job in Congress is to allocate the resources of the nation. When we allocate resources to nutritional assistance to our poorest people, we need to be providing nutrition. It's as simple as that.
If you could, to your point though, I guess talking about like RFK's agenda and the MAHA agenda, I would assume that like, if we want to go down this path, I get it's number one, but I also go, if our goal, if you talked about diabetes and all these long-term issues that people face health-wise, that then, by the way, we pick up the tab when it comes to Medicare and Medicaid. Why not go, if you're going through this effort, look at like ultra-processed food, look at some of the other junk food that's being purchased, and say, hey, let's make this I guess what I'm getting at is, if you're going through this process legislatively, which I know is a tough one, then why not say, let's just make it all one big bill. Let's get the food. Let's get the soda. Let's go at this, try to get people healthy, make sure that SNAP is focused on nutritional stuff, not garbage, instead of maybe doing a two-step where you do soda one day and food the other.
I couldn't agree with you more. There's plenty more to tackle out there. This was the number one purchased item, as I've said, and we were going to start with this. Now, frankly, when I introduced this in the last Congress, we didn't have RFK Jr. at the helm. So I think it's probably going to be a lot more possible this time, because I will tell you, there are people in this Congress that kind of like the way it is. So we'll see how far down the road we get with this small sample before we go big with everything that needs to be tackled. You're absolutely right. There's plenty to tackle.
That sort of brought me into my next. When you say other people in Congress that like the way it is that a partisan thing, or is it Republicans equally? There are some Republicans that equally don't mind soda and ultra processed food being part of SNAP.
Sure. No, I'm talking about my own party. There are people that would like it to remain as it is, because remember,
Why?
we're trying to pass this bill that I think is too slanted toward sugary drinks and ultra processed food, as opposed to supporting our farmers who are growing our food crops.
But so do you think that they are being influenced by big food or soda lobbyists? Like, why? What is? I mean, if the evidence is clear that ultra processed foods are bad for us, which I frankly don't think is a debatable point, then what is their argument to say? Yeah, but let the people eat bad stuff.
Well, I'm not going to speak for them, Sean.
But at some point, there's got to be an argument. They come back to you and say, "Hey, Congressman Self, here's my argument." I mean, I'm not asking you to out names, although I wish you would. But I'm just saying, like, what is the prevailing argument when you go to them and say, would you like to get on my legislation? Why do they say no?
Well, they do mention the food at the soda lobby. So I will leave it at that. I'm not trying to put words in their mouth, but when I talk to them, they do mention the soda lobby.
Okay. And how has support gone for your bill this time around with obviously a more receptive Secretary of Health and Human Services in Robert Kennedy?
I think we've got some support, but you've got to understand, we have been so taken up with reconciliation, with trying to get the CR through that we finally got through. Congress has been focused on the bigger issues, frankly. So a lot of this is not getting any traction, not just my bill, other good bills. We just now got the SAVE Act back on the floor this week. So, we have been so consumed with the budget issue through the CR, now the reconciliation, and next looking at the FY26 budget. So lots of bills have not gotten the traction that they need, because we've been so consumed with this very complex budgetary situation we're in.
All right. You mentioned the farmers and the reason why you got into this. How are they reacting to the tariffs? Like, what is it that the farmers and the ranchers that you talk to say about the current issues that President Trump is addressing with tariffs?
Well, you see people that are concerned about the tariffs because they sell their product overseas. And yet you also hear from farmers that say, this is exactly what we needed, because we need support to be able to sell more of our crops. So it depends on your view. And I think eventually the tariffs will prove successful, and we'll see how they play out. But very encouraged at President Trump finally taking on the fact that we've been ripped off for all these years. He's actually doing something about it. The Democrats and Republicans have been talking about this for years. We're finally doing something about it, which is the absolute total difference.
So to me, there's basically three things that the president's trying to address right now. One is open up new markets for farmers or ranchers or service providers, right? They have high tariffs. We don't. He wants them taken down so that we can get access to their market. So our farmers and ranchers can send stuff. Our manufacturers can do stuff. Two is, I think that he wants to bring in some money to reduce the debt and deficit. And then three is, I think he wants to bring manufacturing both home. I don't believe that there's a way that you can do all three at once, right? I mean, that's just, you can't, it's a surgical thing. You've got to kind of be focused on one or another, because if you lower the tariff, it's hard to then make the case without additional tax policy changes that someone will shift their company back to America. Two is that if you want to reduce the deficit, then you either got to keep the tariff up or down. What do you see right now as the goal of the policy? Is it that market access, deficit reduction, or more onshoring?
I think it's onshoring, but first of all, it's far more complex than what you just laid out, Sean.
Okay.
I'm the chairman of the Europe Subcommittee on Foreign Affairs. We've also got trying to get Europe to take more responsibility for their own defense, which means their GDP needs to come up to closer to our growth. We need to grow our own GDP, and we need to cut government spending in order to cut the debt. You mentioned the debt. This is a very complex, and I think President Trump has a very clear vision of a very complex situation. We all tend to look at these individual issues, tariffs, the reconciliation bill, the defense of Europe, as individual issues, but they're not. It's a very complex situation. Frankly, I think that he wants to onshore jobs, and we're starting to see that happen, 288,000 jobs. In fact, there was a reduction in federal government jobs in that 288,000 last month. So it's already starting to work. We see people starting to talk to other countries, talk to him about the tariffs. So all of this is going to play out over time, because this is a major shock that he's thrown a big rock in the pond. But people will come to grips with what President Trump is trying to do. And frankly, a lot of more of their GDP comes out of the United States, regardless of what the country is. More of their GDP comes out of the United States than we receive from them. So he does have some leverage in the tariffs. But Congress has also got to do its job. We have got to have government spending cuts, and we've got to have pro-growth policies, which includes an extension of the 2017 tax cuts in order to get more growth, as well as cutting federal government spending. Those two working together should juice our economy and our growth. So it's a very complex situation. We're trying to keep tabs on all of it. I leave for Europe on Saturday to talk defense with several nations, to including the EU and NATO commanders.
Congressman, before I let you go, the one other thing is this budget is coming up. The Senate is sending their budget back. I got to be honest with you. I was initially very, very optimistic about cutting some government spending, getting the size of government down. What the Senate sent back to you guys, I'm not very fired up about. Where do you think this is, and where do you think what do you think the outlook is? Like, I mean, I just don't get I was fired up for a while about cutting spending and reducing the size of government, and I get this sense that it's getting watered down and watered down.
I will tell you, President Trump wants to balance the budget. He's been very clear on that recently. Now, he wants to do it very fast, and I don't know if we can do it that fast as the president wants to, but it is wonderful that he has set that vision. Now, to the actual reconciliation bill, which is what you're referring to, we set a very high bar in terms of spending cuts, 1.5 trillion to 2 trillion. The Senate sent back to us like 4 billion. That's 1.5 trillion, which is 1,500 billion against 4 billion.
You're right.
The gulf is just wide.
Yeah, I know. But that's my point, is I got fired up by what you guys did. I was excited. I'm like, yes, let's cut some spending. And then the Senate sends back a pittance. And it's like, well, we'll put a little less cream in our coffee or something. Like, I get it. And this is like a kabuki dance where you guys are going to give two numbers in the ultimate, budget resolution. But I guess my question is there a fight in the House among you and your colleagues to fight for additional spending? Because it seems like the Senate is saying we can do a little here, but that's probably as much as we can do.
The answer to your question is absolutely. Now, the question is how we go about that fight. Do we pass this and then we fight on the committee level for cuts per committee? Or do we not pass this and we actually go and say, Senate, you have got to come up some? But yes, absolutely. There is discussion about how to get to more spending cuts, because $4 billion, let's put this in perspective. $4 billion is probably less than 1 day's worth of borrowing today. Less than 1 day's worth of borrowing today. That's not enough. If we're going to handle the deficit and the debt, we must have more spending cuts, an extension of the tax, more spending on government, more cuts on government spending, and extend the tax cuts to work together.
Okay. Congressman Self, I appreciate you being with us and sharing what you guys are doing to get us healthy again and hopefully to get the budget down. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
You bet. All right, we heard it. Keith Self, take it. Now I want to hear from Kevin Keane, the president and CEO of the American Beverage Association. Kevin, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Great to see you, Sean. I appreciate you having me on.
No, I think this is important for people to understand, because I think that there's a lot of stuff that we're hearing out there, and I want to just make sure we have the best information possible. The first thing I just want to start with is this. There's something that caught my eye the other day. I know it's obviously caught your eye, but there was a bunch of influencers on the right that claimed that an outside company was paying them to recycle talking points. Did the industry have anything to do with that?
We did not. Absolutely nothing to do with it, Sean. And if we did, we would own it.
You're right. And that's what I think is interesting, because it's, something's going to come, which I find it fascinating because those things cost money. And the idea that influencers were getting paid money to support something. Anyway, all right. But I think it's just important that we set the record straight on this.
And I appreciate you asking a question, Sean. I really
No, because we hear this stuff on the internet and it makes sense, right? Because you see a tweet that says, and this is the fun, these influencers are taking money from companies and they out you, not you, Kevin Keane or the American Beverage, but quote, big soda, that are going to be paid off on the SNAP payroll because RFK and Trump are banning them. I'm shocked at some of these names, but you guys weren't the source behind that.
No. Look, Sean, we're always going to stand up and defend ourselves and make our case, but we're going to do it straightforward. And if we were to have done this, we would have owned it.
Right. And the funny part is, I'm sure the thing that I find fascinating is you are the head of the Beverage Association. The idea that you wouldn't be defending your people would be actually malpractice. So I think you're right. But the bottom line is that they didn't. Has anyone apologized to you guys for trying to point the finger to you and you saying, hey, we don't necessarily disagree with the messaging, but it wasn't us?
No, but I don't think the folks who are coming after us sort of apologizing type.
Okay, they're not there. All right, but the larger issue at stake that was at the bottom of this influence campaign is whether or not SNAP, food stamps, should pay for things like soda. So what is your position on that?
So on restrictions on SNAP, especially on soda, aren't going to make an ounce of difference. They're not going to save a penny or a pound when it comes to the taxpayers or those on the program. Now, it's a fair question. I think it's a totally fair question to ask, and we are not afraid of the question, but I think we need to stay focused on whether the goals are actually going to have an impact, or are they just good sound bites? Are they just attractive sound bites? And right now, all the facts show that this is more of a sound bite than a meaningful solution.
Okay, let's break that down for a second, because you said penny or pound. Let's leave the penny aside for now, because you're right. Whether or not they buy a 2 liter of Coke or a 2 liter of, 2 bottles of big bottles of water, like that's probably the same. Let's focus on the pound for a second. Literally the pound. Because the question I have, right, is saying, okay, if it's supplemental nutritional assistance, trying to get them some food in their body that's hopefully healthy, I guess that to me is the more valid argument. Are we making people fat and unhealthy by subsidizing like Coca-Cola or Pepsi?
Absolutely not. That's what I'm saying. It's not going to make a pound of difference by just pulling out one set of products. And let's talk about our products for a second. First, we're 6% of the calories in the diet. So, and that's all throughout all America. Beverage calorie consumption in America is down 42%. And sales of regular soft drinks are down 25%. And that's largely, Sean, because we're cannibalizing those. We're creating these new zero sugar products, everything from sparkling waters to still waters to the teas to zero sugar sports drinks and zero sugar sodas. So that's why it's not going to make a difference. But now, if you flip the equation, and do we want to get folks to buy more fruits and vegetables, let's say, well, let's incentivize that. Let's not get in and micromanage the grocery cart on what should be in or shouldn't be out. Should be out. Let's properly incentivize them to buy some products that maybe they're not buying right now, such as fruits, such as vegetables, which, by the way, are things that don't have a long shelf life, and that might be part of the challenge we're dealing with here.
Okay, but so most of your companies,
yes,
like Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, they have alternatives, right? So
That's right.
Why not say, hey, okay, fine, you can't buy Coke and you can't buy Pepsi, but you could buy Diet Coke or Diet. I mean, again, I'm not arguing for that. I'm just saying that there's an argument that says, okay, because, I've never been, like, as a guy who's dealt with weight issues in my life, like I don't drink Coke. When I used to drink soda, I would drink diet soda, which again, I've cut that out primarily for more water and kind of to your point on the teas and things like that. But I guess my point is, why not just say, all right, like 250 calories or whatever it is for a glass of Coke or Pepsi, if we're going to subsidize it, because it is our money, it's taxpayer money, and the goal is to get people healthier. Like, why not at least take a first step and say, fine, you can't use it for full calorie, but you could use it for like no calorie or sodas or juices or things like that.
But Sean, as you were dealing with those issues, you made choices and you took advantage of the array of choices out there.
Right.
And we believe those on SNAP should have those same choices, those same decisions to make. And keep in mind, 80% of people on SNAP actually work. So they're working. They just don't make enough money to make ends meet. And in this economy we've just been through, I think people can relate and understand that. They're looking for a hand up. But if you're also going to go after the nutrition argument, Sean, why just focus on one set of products? If you're concerned about, let's just say, sugars in the diet, why not address all sugar?
I would throw in ultra processed foods. Like I get it, and I'm with you. Targeting one doesn't solve it, right? I get that, and I'm with you. Like, I believe that we should go out and say, okay, it's nutritional. But I guess the difference, to your point, Kevin, is that when I dealt with this, and when a lot of Americans deal with it, they're making choices that they are making, but they're doing it with their dollars, right? I do believe that if we're going to help somebody with a hand up, and the goal is supplemental nutritional assistance, that we should say, okay, to your point, I'm all in favor of that. I don't think it has to be a singular goal. Why can't we say we're going to incentivize fruits and vegetables and other healthy products, and we're going to disincentivize ultra processed foods and big sugary things? So, like, I would throw in snack food there too. Like, I'm sorry, if you want my money, or some of it, like, I don't want them to eat Cheetos or Doritos or Flamin' Hot, whatever. Like, I'm with you. Like, I think we should go across the board. We shouldn't just target one thing. But I do think there's a difference between the choices that you and I make and the choices that somebody makes who's taking the assistance. And it's sort of like anybody else who's getting a handout. You know, the old saying, beggars can't be choosers.
Well, this is why, Sean, first of all, this is a fair question. And we welcome this debate and this discussion. And it's not the first time we've had this discussion. You know, I used to work for Tommy Thompson, as you know, former governor of Wisconsin, secretary of HHS, father of welfare reform. So I was intimately involved in welfare reform. And we had a big SNAP discussion back then. And part of the reasons we decided, as did other governors, not to restrict SNAP purchases or get into the business of deciding what's in a shopping cart or outside the shopping cart, is we were trying to move people from an entitlement program, a broken entitlement program, into self-sufficiency, kind of help them and push them at the same time into a sustainable job, which ultimately does save the taxpayer money. And as we're doing that, you know, you're trying to lift them up and motivate them. Why kick them by deciding what's in or out in their grocery carts? That's why.
But I don't think it's kicking them, though. But I guess that's the point, is that I don't necessarily believe it's kicking them. I think it's saying you need help, and I'm going to help you, not just financially, but also stay healthy. Like, leading them down a path where somebody who is poor is told, hey, the only options that you have are white bread, snack food, and soda, isn't doing them a favor.
Well, I think choice matters, Sean, and I think that's a big part of what Republicans have stood for a long time, is the ability of people to make their own decisions. I think if you're going to go down the path of restrictions, you need to be consistent, and it's a slippery slope. I remember when people also had the concerns, and they still probably do, that, you know, SNAP dollars are going for meat and crab legs and filet mignon and those type of things. So you have it on both ends of the spectrum. I think you're much stronger place from a public policy standpoint in making true change and truly saving the taxpayers money if you address the SNAP program within the context of overall entitlement programs. If there's a concern about the size of the SNAP program, deal with the size and scope of the SNAP program. I think it's just a slippery slope that's not going to produce the results people want by trying to tell people what they can and cannot have. And I know you're making very fair points. So I think this is just, we have different perspectives on it, and I appreciate you letting me lay out ours.
Right, but and I would just say, and I know this is probably the extreme, but if somebody said with my SNAP benefits I want to purchase tobacco, I think we'd all say, well, that's not a smart choice, right?
That and you can't.
Right.
So that's part of what is I think inaccurate, unfair, and wrong too. We are not tobacco. We do not.
Right. No.
deserve to be
And by no means did I
legalized
mean to
tobacco.
impugn you. I was just using that as the extreme example.
But it's part of why we have our position, Sean. We do not believe it's fair to demonize the people on SNAP or the products that our companies make. They're good products. We're what the president wants. We're American companies making American products with American workers here in America's hometowns. I mean, we are as American and ingrained in the community as you can get. And in these times of tariffs, we're exactly what the president wants. These type of jobs, these type of companies. So the reputational concern is a real one for us.
But I know that there are some people out there that bring up serious health concerns about a lot of these foods. And again, I'm with you. I'll group them all in. Like, I don't think that soda should be singled out, right? I think that all of the foods, like whether it's ultra processed foods, but when we think about the long-term health consequences, right? Mm-hmm. And we think about cardiovascular issues, Medicaid, that Medicaid pays for, or type 2 diabetes, I think that there is a realness about some of the foods and some of the things that are in our diet that probably not just people on SNAP, but all of us should be thinking about what we're doing.
That's right, Sean. So let me tell you what our industry has done. And I don't think people recognize this or think about it. It's probably a more fair thing to say. This is exactly why our industry has been out front leading on creating these 0 calorie, zero sugar choices that taste good. You're seeing the boom in the sparkling waters, 0 calories, 0 sugar. You're seeing the still waters, the smart waters and life waters, the Dasanis and Aquafinas, the Coors. You're seeing the 0 sugar teas. One of the fastest growing products is the 0 sugar sports drinks that are out there. These are things our company's intentionally created to address those concerns that maybe the offerings we had in beverage 15 years ago or so weren't diverse enough to meet people's concerns, especially if they were looking for something that tasted good and had 0 sugar. And one of the things people may not realize too is we are the only industry that offers a 0 sugar, 0 calorie alternative to its flagship products. So Coke or Pepsi, you can buy a Coke Zero or a Diet Coke or a Diet Pepsi or a Pepsi 0 sugar. No other industry does that. And the key, Sean, is they taste good still. So I think we've been out front, and that's why this gets a little frustrating for us sometimes. We actually think we've been the industry that's been out there doing it right for quite a bit of time and meeting the consumers' concerns where they are. And it's not just folks on SNAP who are concerned about these issues. All Americans are. Like you said, you did it. I lost a lot of weight too. I watch what I was eating as well. So I'm drinking. So it's fair, and I just want to broaden people's perspectives a little bit on the issue.
So let's move on for a second and talk about what's in what we drink and eat. And I think that's what sort of RFK has opened a lot of people's eyes to, which is the generally recognized foods that suddenly you turn over the bag of chips or something and go like, what is polyphosphate soybean 52? What do you guys think about when you look over on the side of a Coke or a Diet Coke or a Pepsi, being equal in your industry here? I know for a lot of folks, they go, what is that ingredient in there? What is that? What is that? And I think that there is a degree of transparency that people are looking for, where for the longest time, a consumer like me thought, okay, well, if it's in a bag of chips, then the FDA or someone in the government, of course, has to believe that that's okay for me. Right. What I think is concerning is that RFK started to expose this level of food products or products that are put in foods that we've never really known about. Where do you guys, when people look at the label on a soda, what should we expect?
First of all, Sean, I just want to make it crystal clear. Our products are safe. They're regulated and they're safe. And look, we're some of the biggest brands in the world. We're not going to put out unsafe products. So I think people recognize that. Now, to your question, which is a great one, and I give you a little bit of news here. We're always open to more transparency. We created those calorie labels that are on the front of beverages ourselves. We did that voluntarily, and the rest of the food industry followed. We're about to come out, and we're working on a new transparent website on all the ingredients in our products, and we're working on making it accessible, so it literally can be at the fingertips of a consumer, a mom or a dad going down the aisle, if they want to look at it then, or if they want to take it home and check it out. It's going to be very straightforward, very fact-based. And so that you look for that in the next month. We're beta testing it now, and are close to having that ready to go. And
That's
I think
awesome.
that's going to be very helpful.
So one of the things that we've seen, I'm staring right now at a box of Fruit Loops that I picked up because RFK used Fruit Loops as his examples. And he said, look at this box of Fruit Loops in the US and look at this box of Fruit Loops in Europe and Canada. When I pick up a soda in Canada or Europe, are the ingredients the same or different as the soda that I buy here in the United States?
By and large, yes, Sean. Sometimes due to consumer choice and taste profiles that are different in Europe and others, there may be some slight tweaks. There may be some differences. But I can tell you the ingredients in the products, whether they're here or in Europe, are safe. They are approved by regulatory authorities. And there's no way we would put it such things on the market, regardless of the country that you're in.
So when we hear about like blue dye 1, red dye 40, there's obviously an effort now to ban another, that's not one of the red dyes, but there's like, what do people need to know about when they read that on one of your labels?
Yeah. Well, red dye 3 was the controversial one.
Right.
And we've been out of that. Our industry has been out of that for some time. We recognize the consumer concerns there and adjusted. The colors that we use right now are fully approved by the FDA. They're fully approved by the European Food Safety Authority and by WHO's FDA equivalent agency, as well as many other foreign regulatory agencies. So those are approved colors. Look, we also use natural colors. We're about providing choice. So if somebody wants something different, they can look for that. And we're always going to be looking to meet the consumer where they are. But we don't want to walk away from things that are approved and safe. That's just a dangerous, slippery slope. I mean, I know people have concerns about the FDA. It's always fair to question government. Look, I worked at HHS. I was assistant secretary at HHS. Always fair to look at government and question, how do you make it better? But the harm we would do to ourselves is, despite all the concerns we may have, the FDA is still the gold standard regulatory agency in the world. And I don't think we want to cede that to any other country.
Right. Kevin Keane, CEO of American Beverage, thank you for being with us. I appreciate your insight in this and laying out your side of it. That's what's important here, is for us to have the most information about the choices that we're about to make. So I appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Sean, and thanks for having a great discussion about it. I appreciate that.
You bet. What a great discussion, guys. Remember to sign up for my newsletter, a new edition dropping today at SeanSpicer.com. Tomorrow, Kevin Hassett from the White House. He will be here as well. We'll see you back tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.